There we are. Hello, Packers fans, and welcome into PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Pete Dougherty here on Lambeau Field, where Pete, it honestly didn't click until someone said it just a second ago, but a full 70-minute game. They took they took every second of the extra 10 minutes it took in overtime for the Packers to defeat the Patriots here, 27-24. Pete, the overarching question in the locker room after the game was, is there such a thing as an ugly win, or is a win a win? So I'm going to ask you, is there such a thing as an ugly win, or is every win a win?
Well, I kind of think they're both can be true. Aaron Rodgers had an interesting answer. He was asked basically, is playing like this and winning like this sustainable? And the gist of his answer, once he got to the heart of it, was no, that they have to – he thought they had to do more on offense to not put it on the defense all the time, because the offense did give them 7 points. But I thought the defense wasn't that great either, all things considered. Yeah, they only gave up 17, but they were playing against a third-string quarterback almost the entire game. One thing, though, and I'm sure people disagree with me, but one thing I think is a theme of this season, after watching this team the last 2 years finish with the best record, and last year win a lot of games impressively, and still get bumped out of the playoffs, it doesn't matter how they look. All it matters is that they make the tournament and then how they play in January. If they look great and then they get beat before the Super Bowl, then it's just the same old, same old. And if they look bad but get to the Super Bowl, the bad's forgotten, and it can happen. I think in 2010 they were 6-4, I think, at one point, maybe even 6-6, and they went down the stretch and got hot, and then they won the Super Bowl. So it was ugly. There was a couple red flags. I'm sure people are going to find a lot of things they're very unhappy about, but they got a notch in the win column, and what's a lot more important is what they're playing like 3 months from now.
I'm going to have you take a step a little bit towards me. There we go. And to your point, can sometimes, and I know that we are looking way ahead here, but sometimes can an ugly win really 3 weeks in a row now, because they let the Bears kind of come back in the third quarter too. 3 weeks in a row now where they've had to grind one out. Can those ugly wins pay more dividends in January than blowing everybody out in September?
Well, they might, because when you're in that situation then where it's a tight game in the fourth quarter, you're used to it, So I guess there's that. I mean, look, they are not an impressive-looking team right now. They're not scaring. I don't think they scare anybody right now. But they've got weapons. They've got a lot of talent on defense. They got to find their way on offense and figure out what they do best. And we talked about this how many times for the season. It's probably going to take half a season for them to get a real identity on offense and figure it out. So it's better to win these games and lose them. And then the question is, do they figure it out, or are they still playing like this in December and January?
We have a lot of questions coming in, so let's kind of jump right into it then, Pete, because I imagine this will cover a lot of what we want to talk about. But before we do, just one thing to note, to keep in mind, they did lose Adrian Amos pretty early on. He left the game to be evaluated for a concussion and never returned. Jair Alexander did not play tonight either. That meant a lot of Rasul Douglas, and then Keyshawn Nixon, which has actually not looked too bad at corner. Rudy Ford at safety. He had a decent number of tackles coming up in the run game tonight, which was helpful. When Rudy Ford comes in, it's your immediate reaction is, oh no, the backup. Rudy Ford's been in this league for a long time. He is a veteran, so it's not he's not coming in cold. He was a starter at Jacksonville last year. That was the Athletics' Matt Schneidman making a little cameo there. That being said, let's jump into some of your questions here. Let's see. From Christopher, almost looked like they looked ahead a bit, but not sure. A win is a win, though. It's hard to say they looked ahead to the Giants, but could they have been looking ahead to London? I mean, they're going to have to make a transatlantic trip, maybe try to get in some sightseeing, but that's going to be a haul to get over there and get ready. Could they have maybe kind of taken it a little easy in game prep this week, knowing next week's going to be so tough?
Yeah, you never know what's going through any individual's head. I wonder if when Hoyer leaves, and so this third-string quarterback, rookie, right? Is he undrafted or was he a late pick? I can't remember.
He was a late pick. He was a classic Patriots pick. He played at the FCS level for a long time, and then he spent 1 year at Western Kentucky. Pete, 5,927 passing yards last year and 62 touchdowns.
That's a lot. Now, that's also not against NFL defenses and NFL players. So I wonder if there was kind of a collective, oh, we got this game won feeling from the Packers. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happened. You still would think by the third quarter, when things are tight, that would wear off. And, credit Bill Belichick is, one of the two best coaches ever, right? Him and Lombardi are the two best. And he's probably, in some ways, at his most dangerous when he's most undermanned, So you can see how well coached they are. But this was, to a team with the third-string quarterback to have it be this tight, this is not sustainable to play this way. This has to be one of those where you look back at the end of the year and it's a forgotten game. And if the red flags that popped up in this are still going in December, then they do have real issues.
We actually have a decent bit of questions about the defense, so let's jump into that. Before we do, wanted to add this. We talked to Eric Stokes, Quay Walker, and Kenny Clark in the locker room about the defense, and Kenny Clark in particular about the run defense, because that has been an issue. And he admitted, he was like, we know we have to shore up the run defense. Pete, this defense was supposed to be the best defense in the NFL, and a lot of that had to do with what they had in the trenches. This was supposed to be the most depth they've had in a long time on the defensive line. I asked Kenny Clark, is this just some new faces and new places? Y'all are still figuring out how to gel together? And he said, no, I'm never going to put it on that. We've got the guys. We've got the talent. He said it's a lot of little things in the details, and he said that that's something they can fix quickly in season. And do you buy that?
Yeah, because of the talent they have, they can. That defensive line rotation is supposed to be a strength, which should keep guys fresher. Wyatt not being as much of a factor as we would have thought, that would have helped if he were a big part of the rotation and playing really good football as a rookie. But they do have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. They don't need to be the best defense in the league, but they need to be a top 5 scoring defense. And I haven't looked at the stats, so they might be. Although they gave out 20, they didn't give out 24, but the 24 is going to show up. They need to be better than they were today against the third-string quarterback. They did get some key stops, including in overtime there. But this was a really shaky win. Yeah, push comes to shove. Can they improve the run defense? Sure. Walker will get better. They can shore up some of those details that Kenny Clark was talking about. But it's a long way from here to there. And there's going to be games where they need that defense to win them games because the offense just isn't as explosive as it was the last couple of years.
With that in mind, let's take this question from Eric Russell. Why the lack of 4-man fronts? Gave way too much to the Patriots running right up the middle.
Yeah, well, when they're in nickel, they're in 4-man fronts. But they could have, and Tom Silverstein asked this question, you might be referring to this, they could have gone with just a real live 4 defensive linemen and not have 2 of those guys be outside linebackers, especially when they're putting Cannon out there, 61. How many times did we hear that announcement?
I realized I was ready for them to put 61 in a receiver jersey.
15 plays in a row, it felt like. So they got 6 offensive linemen on the field. They're going to run the ball. That seemed like they did not adjust to that very well. I mean, that drive, there was, 7 plays, and they ran on 6 of them and picked up 45 yards, I think it was. Just jammed it right down the Packers' throat. With their third-string quarterback, you know what's coming, and they didn't stop him.
We have seen a decent bit of the secondary coming up to help in run support. I want to go back and look tonight and see how many tackles Rasul Douglas has behind the line of scrimmage, because I think it's a decent bit already through 4 games. Can that be the key to sort of helping shore up this run defense while the trenches figure things out?
Well, in nickel, but Alexander didn't play today, so Rasul wasn't in the nickel today. I think it's more they just need to dominate the front 7 is supposed to be the strength, and they just need to dominate that area more than they did today.
A lot of questions about Romeo Doubs. Of course, he is the man of the day yet again for both good and bad reasons. John asked, why did the Romeo Doubs touchdown not count? He had it. No, he didn't. And, that seemed pretty clear on replay, Pete. And Matt LaFleur even said he regretted the challenge, right?
Yeah, he did. So the rule is Yeah, 2 feet down, but then if you hit the ground right after that, you have to finish the catch. He hit the ground, the ball popped out. By rule, that was clearly an incompletion. LaFleur said so after the game, and he said the guy in the box who helps him make those decisions said, no, I don't think so. And LaFleur said he just made an emotional decision and threw the flag, and obviously regretted it because, if they had that timeout, they would have gotten the ball back with like 50 seconds left or so. That would have been plenty of time to get down in position to kick a field goal to win it in regulation.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Looking back. Speaking of wide receivers, Lindell asked, "Do we have enough in the wide receiver room, or do we need to make a trade?" It feels like with what they're finding in Doubs, with how they're using Watson, lots of jet sweeps, which we asked for this offseason, do they have enough diversity? Is it deep enough as well with that diverse group?
To be determined, in my opinion, but too early to pull the trigger on a deal because you never know. They have limited resources, $7 or $8 million under the cap for the rest of this year. So what if they lose an outside linebacker? Then they'll have to go get somebody who would cost something. So I would hold off. Doubs is really promising. Watson is very explosive. We saw that on the jet sweep.
I think he went over 20 miles an hour.
What is that right? He accelerates fast too. It doesn't take him a long time to get there. And Tunyon, the catch, he'll be coming around more in the next 2 months. So I'm withholding judgment on that for at least I think the trade deadline is usually late October. So I'm personally withholding judgment on that. I think there's still a decent chance that they won't need to make a move, but either way, the longer they wait, the more cap money they save because whatever is left on the guy's contract every week he's playing for another team is a week less salary they'd have to give whoever they go out and acquire.
Speaking of Tunyon, let's go back to that. Levi asked, why isn't Tunyon a bigger weapon in the red zone? A lot of times he's not even on the field. And I guess it technically should be noted that his touchdown tonight, they were not in the red zone. I think they were on the 23.
Yeah, they were just outside the 20.
They were just outside the red zone. But those seams right down the middle, that's sort of Tunyon's bread and butter. And he said tonight, he said, I needed to get that off my shoulders. I had that cloud hanging over my head. I needed to get that touchdown. Are we seeing him sort of get his feet back underneath him? And how much do you have to remind yourself, like, hey, he came back maybe even a little earlier than a lot of people would from that ACL tear?
Yeah, and it's, we've talked about this before too, but, the doctors tell you that it takes a full year and it takes the last couple months for the new nerves to regenerate for your new ACL because there are no nerves there when they put the replacement in. And so that's the last part that gets the guy over the top and gets him to close to what he was before the injury. And so he's still not there yet. But if I'm the Packers, I'm hoping he is full go and much more like his old self. I don't know, late November, somewhere in there, mid to late November. So I would guess it'll still be a while.
Couple more questions about the run defense. I like this one in particular from Rebecca. Does the run defense struggle against power runs in particular? And is that kind of why the Patriots were bringing so many offensive linemen on?
Yeah, looked like it tonight, and they pulled the guard a few times on some of those runs, and it was just kind of shocking to sit there and watch the ball get shoved right down their throat when you knew. I mean, you got to make that guy throw the ball to beat you, third string quarterback. You have to.
Levi asked, is Elton Jenkins' pass pro still not up to standard?
It sure didn't look like it. And he got beat on an inside rush for the second time and gave up a couple other pressures, I think. He's not a full year back yet, so he's definitely not the player he was before he got hurt either. It's going to be, I would guess, be a gradual thing. Again, and we'll see how he's playing. November is probably the time to look for him to be more like what he was before he got hurt.
But then Bach, it feels like he didn't miss a beat, and he was the one I know a lot of us were worried about not looking like himself.
Yeah, with all those fits and starts and stops, and you still have no idea how his knee's going to react. How will it be a month from now? Who knows? But he was off the injury report last week, and he played all but one series, I think, tonight. So it sure looks like he's ready to be full go, and we'll just see how he holds up over the next month. You still wonder if one of these days all of a sudden he's going to show up on the injury report and be out, but right now it's trending the other way, and he seems to be doing okay.
And Josh Neiman was active and played tonight, so I know that had been a concern with the illness, and that could have been why Josh Neiman wasn't playing as much. Was still just kind of recovering. Lindell, this is more of a comment, but I'm gonna get your opinion on this. He says Joe Barry was outcoached. Agree? Disagree?
Agree. Did not adapt very well to the sixth offensive lineman being brought out there. I would agree with that.
But then, as a couple of people have mentioned, 3rd and Cobb, it seems to never fail.
That was, I'm a Cobb skeptic as far as small guy, 32, lots of injuries the last few years. I still wonder how he'll be in December, but he was huge. He's had some big plays already this year, and he was huge tonight.
32 is not old. For a football player, I understand.
For a little football player, it is. No, for the rest of us, no, 32 is not old at all.
He was on the Jimmy Fallon NFL Superlatives the other night, and it said Randall Cobb, best or most likely to be 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s. No one knows. So, yeah, Randall Cobb got a laugh out of that. Let's see. A couple more questions here before we sign off. Frank asked, do the Packers need to look for a new return man? Amari Rodgers, that's been all he's doing right now. Do you see improvement? Is the improvement enough? Is it just kind of plateaued?
I mean, he looks more comfortable catching the ball back there, I guess. He looks a little better. He definitely looks better than last year. But like we've said every week up until now, he's not putting any scare into special teams coordinators on the other side of the field. So do they need a new returner? Yeah, I just don't know if they'll be able to find one in season or not.
Last thing before we wrap up, because several of you have mentioned him here in the comments, so I want to get Pete's opinion too. If you're Brian Gutekunst, do you just go ahead and sign Rashawn Gary's new deal now? Because it feels like every week he comes out here, he's costing you more and more money.
He is. I think cap-wise, they probably can't do it because his salary is so low. Mm-hmm. They can't do any substituting and bring his cap number down or even keep it the same. And they don't have the room to spare, so I think this is one that just has to wait until the offseason, and the dollar signs will just keep getting bigger.
Yep. Every time he sacks, that needs to be his new sack celebration, is dollar signs. Because every time he grabs one, he's making the price go up. Well, Pete, you were heading to London on Thursday?
Leave Thursday afternoon, get there Friday morning.
That's right, where the Packers will meet a 3-1 New York Giants team. Might be a little bit tougher than they thought.
Yeah, they played the Bears today, who are struggling. I watched bits and pieces of it, so I don't know how well the Giants are playing. But as we saw today, you can't take anything for granted.
Exactly. Well, Pete will be there with Ryan to cover it for you from London. But we still got a lot to talk about here from the Packers' 27-24 overtime win against the New England Patriots and 3 different quarterbacks, it seemed like. We will have full coverage for you on PackersNews.com. Pete, I know you've got a column coming on defense. Is that correct?
A little bit of defense, a little bit of perspective at how to look at such an ugly game and what to make of it.
Yeah. Looking ahead right to January a little bit. Yeah. We'll have it covered for you from every angle, though, here from Lambeau Field. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. For Pete, I'm Kassidy. We'll see you next time.